Pokémon Legends ZA's Mega Dimension DLC does not respect your time, and I'm going to show you exactly how and even how I would fix it. Hi, I'm 2Dens. Over the past couple weeks, I have spent over 40 hours playing Mega Dimension. I intended to complete the Pokédex along with all main and side missions for this video, but I just couldn't. It's too frustrating. I got the missions done and I finally completed Mabel's research rewards, which I didn't do in the base game, but completing the Pokédex is a horrible grind. A truly horrible grind. It's not just the Pokédex though. The entire DLC is filled with grind after grind, and it keeps getting worse the further in you go. They get a lot longer and a lot of RNG is introduced. It's so bad that it makes me think the gameplay loop was untested. It's a textbook case of awful game design to the point where playing the game can get unpleasant at times, and I can't help but wonder how and why it happened. Modern Pokemon games have had a lot of issues, but the gameplay loop has always been a relative strength. But before I get into the DLC's many problems, I want to briefly talk about what I liked. I prefer to keep things as optimistic as possible on this channel, and my video on the base game was one of the more positive takes out there. So, Mega Dimension has a lot of new megas, and they all range from solid to fantastic designs, and some are super surprising and fun. On a related note, the Rogue Mega battles are better than ever. The dialogue is also really funny at times. The base game got a couple genuine laughs out of me, but I've been laughing pretty hard throughout the DLC. It's been a pleasant surprise and an otherwise unpleasant experience. Character building seems to have been a huge focus in development, which is good, but is also related to another big problem, which we'll get to. It's also a lot easier to complete Mabel's research and unlock the shiny charm now. It should happen naturally as you play. Finally, the last boss of the main campaign is a massive improvement over that of the base game. I'm not spoiling it here, in fact there won't be any major spoilers in this video. It's challenging, lore appropriate, and exciting, especially to long-term fans. There's a few more bosses like this in the post-game, and those had me feeling incredibly nostalgic and in awe as I was finally seeing how I envisioned Pokemon games to look from when I was a kid. Truly amazing. Yet, getting to those moments involves experiencing the worst gameplay loop I have ever seen in a Pokemon game. It's weird because it's really the same gameplay loop as the base game, which was already weaker than most games in the series. The core loop of Mega Dimension are the Hyperspace Rifts, which are really just wild zones and battle zones with extra steps. So let's quickly compare the two loops. In the base game, you enter a wild zone, then battle and catch Pokemon while checking them off a predetermined list. You might find a Pokemon not on the list, but it's usually going to be an evolution of one, or in rare cases, a unique alpha. In the battle zones, you collect bonus cards and medals while taking on opponents to complete objectives. That's really it. The wild zones are better than the battle zones in my opinion, but it's all held together relatively well by the battle system. Throughout most of the game, you'll be doing the ZA Royale to accrue points that will allow you to progress to the next story beat. In the DLC, you venture into Hyperspace Rifts, but first you need a key, or a donut, which you make with berries. Then you pick a rift and try to complete the objectives that come with it. Every rift has a timer that is determined by the power level of your donut. Complete the objectives to spawn a bonus floating Pokeball, which you need to find. If you find it on time, you'll get an assortment of valuable berries. Completing the objectives gives you points that will, once again, allow you to progress further into the story. The marketing for Mega Dimension implied that Hyperspace Lumiose was a bit of a roguelite, with progressively more powerful and dangerous Pokemon and special bonuses that are unlocked and used throughout the runs. And this is kinda true. Depending on what berries are used, each donut will have a different power level that increases your Pokemon's level beyond 100, it increases the timer, and gives you small buffs, most of which don't matter. The berries were a big source of frustration for me for reasons that will become clear as I discuss the rifts themselves. Hyperspace Lumiose has a lot of problems, and I mean a lot. There are 3 types of rifts, wild and battle zones as I mentioned earlier, and then rogue mega arenas. It's important to understand that each rift is a semi-randomly generated slice of Lumiose. They're mostly the same few maps over and over, but the scaffolding and obstacles vary slightly, and each zone is not created equal. Depending on which area you get, completing the objectives might take 30 seconds or over 5 minutes, which is a problem when you're facing a timer. If you don't finish on time, you're punished heavily by missing out on very valuable berries. But even if you do meet the timer, you still have to find the bonus Pokeball, which can also be hard to do because it has very random spawn locations. And this is all made worse by the fact that Pokemon pathing seems to be pretty broken in hyperspace. It's very unpredictable. Your mons will often get stuck on random terrain and sometimes will even run in the opposite direction from your target to try to climb scaffolding that is a mile away. I'd have to do a lot more testing to confirm this, but it seems like Pokemon are programmed to prioritize horizontal movement over vertical, so will always try to find even ground to reach their target. But again, I don't know. It's so inconsistent that I can't get a clear idea of what's happening. It could be as simple as the movement AI not working well with randomly generated obstacles. That's a bit beside the point. Let's refocus on the bonus balls. As you unlock higher level rifts, you will quickly need to start using hyperspace berries to create appropriately powerful donuts. These hyperspace berries only come from hyperspace rifts with very few exceptions, and you need to invest a lot of them to create a strong enough donut. Finding and hitting the bonus ball will almost always reward more berries than you invested, but if you don't manage that, your investment is gone, both the donut you used and the potential berries earned from the bonus ball. You then need to farm more hyperspace berries from lower level rifts. We aren't mapping in Path of Exile. Why am I farming keys from lower level hyperspace rifts for the privilege of accessing higher level ones? Just let me do the rifts without a dang key. I'm not even sure PoE does that sort of thing anymore. I haven't played that game in a long time. Let me know in the comments if you know. That's not everything though. When you're picking what rift to enter, you'll see a set of 3 Pokemon that you can find inside. Keyword can, because not only have I not been able to find one of the listed Pokemon despite turning the map upside down, I've also found Pokemon that are not listed. So now I should be checking not only rifts with Pokemon that I haven't caught, but also Pokemon that I have caught? To be fair, this is how it functions in the base game, but the base game doesn't require me to farm for berries and go make a donut just so I can enter a wild zone. And you better get those rifts done, because they disappear on the transition to day and night. Game Freak somehow found a way to make the day-night cycle worse. Not to mention, some missions require specific donuts to be made by reaching specific flavor levels, which makes some berries much more valuable than others, so you better be saving those high-value berries that you don't know you need to be saving. Thankfully, there are really only a handful of these missions, but it still was a huge drag to go farm specific berries for them. And it's not like the game does nothing to abate the grind. While the first unique donut recipe took me between 2 and 3 hours of grinding, I barely had to grind at all for the last one due to the sheer number of berries I had. Eventually, your donuts are so powerful that it's kinda hard to run out of time without finding the bonus ball, unless you're really not trying. So your berry reserves will always be running high. In fact, once you're done with the missions that require unique berry recipes, you don't have to worry about what berries you use at all, unless you're farming for specific shinies or alphas, which are the only bonus effects that really matter. Unfortunately, right when specific berries stop mattering, the game introduces another layer of the grind. The deep post-game consists of completing special scans, which require you to accrue 25,000 research points to unlock one random rift that might be a wild zone with a Pokemon you don't already have, might be a legendary Pokemon that you don't already have, and might be a completely useless battle zone. Every time you spawn one, you have to farm another 25,000 points. The special rifts themselves do give a lot of points at least, but this is where I had to throw in the towel, after I got my 4th battle zone in a row. Why is this in the game? This feels like I'm doing daily quests in World of Warcraft. ZA is a single-player RPG. It shouldn't be weighed down by these live servicey practices. Pokémon Legends Arceus had free DLC with a decent storyline and included massive mass outbreaks, which streamlined the core gameplay loop. Mega Dimension does the opposite. But if it was just the grindy RNG nature of the DLC, I wouldn't be saying it doesn't respect your time. So much else contributes to that sentiment, and it all comes down to pacing. If you watched my full critique on the base game, you know that pacing was the worst part of the game for me. The DLC takes all of those problems and amplifies them. Let's talk about the story first, because one of my positives was the dialogue being really funny, and it is. It's very funny, and I was entertained throughout. Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of fluff. Every mission has a lot of get-to-know-you sections, where the game has you doing random things with the various characters. It's good for world building because a lot of these characters didn't get much development in the base game, but the problem is that it isn't well woven into the plot. They feel very random, as if they've been shoehorned in for the sake of padding. In fact, these missions remind me of Genshin Impact. I played like 600 hours of Genshin Impact for the year or so of its release. Don't worry, I never spent a dime. And it has these long quest lines that basically send you on an extended date with each of the characters. You get to know them a lot, but they rarely have any immediate relevance to the plot, and that's because they're not meant to contribute to the main story, they're meant to encourage you to spend money pulling for that character. I hated these quest lines because they were a waste of my time, but I had to do them to progress. See where I'm going with this? The actual plot of Mega Dimension is very skimpy. There are no genuinely interesting themes like in the base game, and the overarching mystery has only tiny revelations throughout the main story missions, and you'll probably guess what's going on halfway through anyway. It took me around 12 hours to see the credits, but if these sections had been removed or relegated to side missions, then it would have been closer to 4. Yes, 4 hours. Speaking of side missions, they have their problems too. I will say, there were a lot fewer vapid side missions in the DLC than in the base game. Most had substantial stories, even if many were quite silly, and it's clear a lot more effort was put into them. They're also much more creative than those of the base game, with some very interesting and difficult challenges here and there. They even character build for the main and secondary cast even more in the DLC postgame, and you know what? They're even a little bit better with the pacing. Side missions aren't constantly popping up like they were in the base game, though when they do pop up it's usually between 7 and 10 of them, and would often take me 30 to 40 minutes to get through. The bigger problem is the cutscenes, specifically the in-engine ones, and this goes for both main and side missions. For some reason that I cannot deign to comprehend, the developers decided to use long, drawn-out, cinematic camera zooms constantly. It feels like they last forever, and the game does it so much. It starts with the first couple side quests, but those kind of make sense because the game is demonstrating moves that require a charge up and moves that hit repeatedly. It makes sense in context. But then it just keeps doing it. These camera zooms waste so much time. This probably sounds like a nitpick, but this kind of thing adds up over dozens of hours. There are 12 main missions with a bunch of sub-missions within them, and over 80 side missions that are all generally longer than in the base game. And the vast majority of them have this stupid zoom effect in their cutscenes. I found myself mashing A to get through the cutscenes as quickly as possible, despite the fact that text wasn't even on the screen because it became so unbearable. And no, you can't skip these. I mean, just don't do that? I don't mean to insult Game Freak's groundbreaking discovery of camera zooms, but they really, really are not necessary. And some of these side quests drove me nuts. For example, there was one side quest that required me to catch a Farfetch'd, but I couldn't find a Farfetch'd for another 25 hours because of the game's RNG. There was another quest that required me to catch all 3 forms of Tatsugiri, and I also couldn't get them to spawn for hours. Those 2 really aren't the fault of the side missions, that's just bad RNG. But there are side missions that are awful in and of themselves. Here are 2 infuriating examples that seem intentionally designed to waste your time. There's a quest that involves battling each form of Rotom, but for some reason the developers decided to have an individual battle for each one of them instead of having a team of Rotom. This means we had to go through the entry cutscene with camera zooms, then go through the battle start animations, and the battle end animations, and then repeat that process 5 times. This single side mission took me over 15 minutes just because of that. The game allows for mid-battle cutscenes, so why not just use those? Another quest involves bringing a Scovillain that knows spicy extract to the cafe. You then need to go around the restaurant and use spicy extract on 15 different tables. And spicy extract has a 12-second cooldown. You can't do anything while it's on cooldown. You just sit there. What supervillain made this? But one quest is actually so egregious that it changed my behavior for the rest of the DLC, even though there are no other quests like it. Sometimes, special hyperspace rifts will pop up marked with side mission detected. The very first time one of these pops up, you go in, and all you can do is accept the quest. There's no Pokemon, no Pokeballs, no shiny objects on the ground, nothing. There's just the quest. Now, this ended up being a cool quest, but the problem is that it sets a precedent. Sometimes when you enter a rift marked as a side quest, there won't be anything to do, and there isn't anything that really warns you about that. Keep in mind, even though this is marked as a 1-star rift, it's at the beginning of the DLC. They were all 1-star rifts at this point. So why does this matter? Well, from this point forward, I felt the need to come prepared with a throwaway donut to test these rifts when they appeared. I would go in with a lower level donut as not to waste valuable berries, and then go in again when I saw that there was no actual content to engage with inside the rift. Or that was what I was planning to have to do until I realized that if you leave and come back, the rift disappears, and you have to wait for it to respawn. They always seem to respawn with the transition from day to night or vice versa, but still, this isn't necessary. It's just friction. Why couldn't the game just give me a throwaway donut for that quest somehow, or at least just indicate that there's nothing to do in there so that I didn't need to worry about it in the future? Thankfully, there are very few quests like this. There might have only been 2 or 3 actually. It's hard to remember. Most hyperspace side missions are marked as new megastone detected, and those that have regular battles in them are always higher than 1 star, and I eventually just started to assume they were worth investing higher level donuts into. And I was always right. But it was an easily avoidable issue if they had just thought about it a little bit. One small UI adjustment could have made all the difference. Okay, I've talked a bit about improving the missions and cutscenes, so let's finally talk about improving the gameplay. Believe it or not, I actually have a pretty good idea of how they could do this, and I'm no game developer. I just really like roguelites. 1. Take the random bonuses from the donuts, aside from the alpha and shiny chances, and put them in the floating Pokeballs. Now, every time you hit a ball, you'll get a power-up along with the berries and whatever other items are contained. 2. Pokeballs should now also level your Pokemon up whenever you hit them. Use the size of the ball as a measure of how many levels they provide. There should also be a limited number of Pokeballs on each map, and golden bonus balls can spawn occasionally as well. 3. Remove the hard time limit and instead add timed increases of wild Pokemon or battle opponent levels. This way, the rift levels up over time while you're in there, and new objectives pop up as well. Eventually, the levels will outpace your Pokemon until late in post-game. 4. Different rifts should have different affixes that actually change how you would approach the challenge. For example, reduced cooldowns for flying attacks for both enemies and your Pokemon. 5. The further you progress into the rifts, the better butter you unlock, just like in the actual game, allowing Ansha to make better donuts. These donuts allow your Pokemon to start at a higher level. You can also have bonuses for alpha and shiny chances, and the Pokeballs in the maps can increase it further, hence why there needs to be a limited number. 6. If the rift goes all the way to level 200 and all objectives are completed, either spawn a legendary Pokemon in the rift to challenge while letting the player save first, or spawn another rift in Lumiose with a guaranteed legendary that cycles, so you're at least guaranteed to encounter them all eventually in a reasonable amount of time. No more infinite research points, just challenging content with meaningful rewards. There you go. It's definitely not perfect, and I'm sure there are any number of issues with this idea, but I think this would be a huge improvement over what we got, and actually be an interesting gameplay loop. And I'm just a dude. Again, I'm not a game developer. Pokémon Legends ZA's Mega Dimension DLC was so frustrating to play. It wastes your time, has terrible RNG grinds, and is generally unpleasant. Yet like the base game, which had its own highs and lows, so did the DLC. The gameplay, the pacing, the padding, that all genuinely worries me about the future of Pokemon. But there are also some incredible moments that captured my nostalgic imagination in a way no modern Pokemon game has. And that includes Arceus. I just hope the future brings less of the former and more of the latter. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Let me know what your favorite new Mega is in the comments below, and please consider liking and subscribing if you've enjoyed this. I've also finally opened YouTube memberships if you're interested, and I have a 100% free Patreon with an optional pledge tier where I'm going to be posting updates and behind-the-scene tidbits. Feel free to check it out. Thank you so much for watching.